On to the ramming of Garda Vehicles Bill 2015 second stage, and I call on Deputy Brendan Griffin to move the second reading motion that the bill be now read a second time.
So move.
So you will then make your speech. You have 15 minutes then, Deputy.
15 minutes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Minister, for being here for the bill, and I appreciate the opportunity that's been extended here to give backbench TDs like myself an opportunity to move private members' bills, and that is a very positive reform that has come about in the last number of years. The purpose of this particular bill is to create a specific offence out of deliberately ramming a Garda vehicle, a vehicle being operated by a member of Garda Síochána in the course of their duties. And the purpose of that is to try to reduce the shocking numbers of rammings that are taking place. The figures that I've been provided with show that in a 4-year period between 2010 and 2013 inclusive, there were 244 instances of Garda vehicles being rammed. And we've seen, unfortunately, in the past, we've seen some very tragic cases where serious injuries and even fatalities have resulted as a result of such instances, and we need to stop this. We absolutely need to stamp this out, and I think everyone in the House would agree when I say that an attack on the Gardaí is an attack on everyone. It's an attack on the state. It's an attack on the people of this country. And we need to do everything possible to provide as much a deterrent as possible to eliminate this risk. It's probably an ideal thing to say that you could eliminate this, but certainly I think we need to try to reduce the possibility of this happening. And that's why I feel at the moment there obviously isn't enough of a deterrent to stop this when it's happening more than once a week, according to the most recent figures I have. And when that is the case, well, Parliament needs to act. And we as members of Parliament need to act to try to protect members of Garda Síochána as much as we can. And that's what this bill is about. And I appreciate that there are measures already in law that address these circumstances when they occur. For example, the Non-Fatal Offences Against the Person Act, or criminal damage. Any of these things, yes, are helpful, but as I pointed out, the figures are showing that they're not working, and they aren't stopping this from happening. And what I feel we need to do is to create a very, very clear and unequivocal message to perpetrators of such intolerable crime that you will not get away with this, that this is stepping well beyond a line that should never be crossed, and that the full rigours of the law will meet you if you do that. And that's why I want to see the ethos of this bill move forward. And if it doesn't become legislation in this Parliament and in this 31st stall, maybe the spirit of what I'm saying here could be incorporated into some future piece of legislation. And ultimately, it doesn't matter to me whether it's this bill or whether it's part of another bill that gets enacted. I just want to see the maximum level of protection extended to our Gardaí in the course of their duties. They put their lives on the line day in, day out. These people without whom our society could possibly descend into complete chaos. The members of Garda Síochána have a unique role, and we need to do as much as we can to protect them. I welcome that the bill will not be opposed. And again, as I said, it doesn't matter to me whether the bill is progressed as it is, or whether the ethos of the bill is taken and moved into a different piece of legislation. But I just do want to see something happening on this, and I want to see the state reacting. And I think it certainly is something that we all would like to see. There are other measures, of course, that would help protect our Gardaí as well in the course of their duties, outside of legislative change. And for example, in cases where Gardaí are being rammed by vehicles, they would stand a better chance of avoiding injury or even worse, possibly, if their vehicle is reinforced, if they're in a stronger vehicle, if they're in an armoured vehicle. And I acknowledge the efforts of Minister Fitzgerald in recent times to acquire new vehicles, particularly new, stronger, reinforced vehicles. And I think that with the recovering economy and with the recovering public finances, we have a great opportunity now to catch up on the last years as a result of the economic crash, and to try to make this now the norm when purchasing Garda vehicles into the future. Give our Gardaí the best possible chance in a vehicle. Make it reinforced, give it armoured glass in certain cases, give them the best possible chance. It will cost more, certainly, but what price can you put on a life, and certainly on the lives of those people who are trying to protect the citizens of this country from perpetrators of crime? And I think that needs to be a policy direction that we take as the norm and not the exception into the future. But again, I want to acknowledge the moves that have already been made. And I would also like to say as well that, you know, ramming cases cause a huge amount of lost hours as well for our Gardaí. People who are off of work because of injury acquired in such instances. And, you know, I think that without sounding crass or putting a monetary price on this, but it's actually costing the state a huge amount when a Garda gets injured or when a Garda has to take leave from work as a result of something like this happening. And of course the human cost is always first, but you know, as lawmakers here, we need to also consider all the facts. And I recently sought figures on just exactly what the extent of the problem is and how many hours are lost, but I wasn't able to acquire such figures. But anecdotally, from speaking with members of Garda Síochána, from liaising with people who know what's going on, this is a problem. And you know, we have an opportunity here, I think, to address this. And again, as I said, I don't want to sound crass or anything about it, talking about the economic cost of this, but you have to talk about that too, though. And I think there are huge savings to be made here as well if we take the proper policy approach. On the issue of general crime prevention measures, I think that to assist Gardaí in the course of their duties and to try to reduce the number of cases in which Gardaí find themselves pursuing criminals in the countryside or in urban areas, I think many preventative measures can be put in place or could be put in place to try to help the overall situation. And I'm on the record here a number of weeks ago talking about rural areas and strategic locations in rural areas and about trying to create as much a deterrent as possible to crime in those areas by strategically locating CCTV cameras. And I particularly, in relation to my own constituency, referred to the Dingle Peninsula. To get onto the Dingle Peninsula, where a population of over 10,000 people, you need to pass either Bulteens Bridge on the south side of the Slieve Mountains, or you need to pass through Curryheen or Derrymore on the north side. That's the only way in or out unless you're going to take a boat. And there aren't too many boats sailing this time of year. And, you know, surely those locations are ideal to place a Garda camera just to see who's coming and who's going. It's not Big Brother, it's not the state going mad, it's a simple preventative measure that would help people sleep easier in their beds at night time and would give Gardaí an extra chance. It won't prevent crime, but it creates an extra deterrent. And if we're creating more and more deterrents, putting more and more cogs on the wheel, then we get to a much better place. Similarly, Valentia Island in southwest Kerry, a number of burglaries took place there last year. The island has a bridge connecting it. It's one way in and one way out. The ferry only operates a couple of times in the year, and it's not exactly an ideal high-speed getaway mechanism. So why not have cameras on the bridge? And just to see who's going in and who's going out when something occurs, or you know, hopefully nothing would occur if you have those preventative measures. It's the same with the Beara Peninsula. I see my colleague here, Deputy Harrington, is here. He knows the lay of the land there. If you're leaving Kinmare to try to get onto Beara from the north side, you can only take one road. And it's similar throughout the whole country. There are locations that are strategic that you need to pass through, and the Gardaí in each division would be able to easily identify them. It's not a very expensive thing to do now with modern technology, and let's use technology to our advantage, because the criminals, God knows, have been using technology to their advantage for long enough, and we need to do more, I think, to try to do that. And I think that would help, as I said, reduce instances where Gardaí find themselves having to pursue criminals in the countryside and possibly people who have committed burglaries or other offences. And I think that would be a positive step forward. And I also feel as well that, you know, we need to start looking at helping communities, helping people to help themselves. And whereas, yes, a state-led top-down approach is very welcome, more Gardaí, more visible Gardaí and more mobile Gardaí and better equipped and resourced Gardaí and more people coming through as recruits. We also need to, I think, from the ground up at community levels, invest more in things like the community alert schemes, which I'm very familiar with in my own location at home, but also individual homeowners who perhaps at the moment are not in a position to afford extra security items like security lighting or like cameras in their own homes or other measures that would be helpful to people. Gates, electronic gates, or whatever else they're looking for. Maybe we can look at making those items, that people will be able to write them off against tax, or put a rebate there, or to give them a reduction of VAT, or to do something there to make it more affordable for people. And I think that would be a help as well. Again, it would be part of the multi-cogged approach that I've spoken of. I think there are certainly other ideas I've heard here in the chamber from deputies as well that we could implement, that we could look at, and that would help in the overall situation. I want to again acknowledge the opportunity, first of all, given here to introduce this bill, and thank the Minister for attending. But I finally just want to say that during the week I saw the report which showed that 1,500 staff in the Phoenix Park could be freed up for frontline duties, and I think we need to really address that. We need to look at how we can do that, how we can get those Gardaí out onto the front line, and we need, I think, to have a look at the reserve, the approach to the Garda Reserve, and see, can we get more people in to do administrative duties through the reserve? Can we look at freeing up trained frontline Gardaí to get out there, and in many cases to do the jobs they want to do? And to try to get more Gardaí out on the beat and visible and mobile. And I think that's something that needs to be a priority. One other thing I want to say is that I noticed recently figures were published showing the rates of burglaries per 100,000 of population, and thankfully my own county of Kerry was one of the lowest, and I was glad to see that. But listening to certain elements in the media and certain public representatives over recent months, you'd think that it was the Wild West, that law and order had completely broken down. And I just think that as public representatives certainly here, we just need to be conscious that when we speak, that we need to be speaking in the public good, and we need to be conscious that it does frighten people, and it does frighten people perhaps unnecessarily when people speak of crime epidemics or waves of crime. And we have a responsibility here to be objective, and we have a responsibility here to call it as it is, and not to overemphasise or not to frighten people, because God knows there are enough of things that are frightening people at the moment, and we don't need unnecessary things to be frightening people. But of course, when there is a problem, yes, it needs to be spoken about, it needs to be discussed here, but it needs balance, and it needs people to approach this responsibly, because those who are listening to the debate and who are most tuned in, I think, are those who are most vulnerable. And it is certainly, I've met many people, it's a horrible feeling for people to be afraid in their own homes. And we should not be contributing to that in any way unless it's warranted. Thank you, Ceann Carla. I would very much welcome the contributions of people here in relation to the bill. As I said, I want to see this issue addressed. I want to bring attention to what is obviously a problem given the figures, and perhaps this particular bill and how it's worded, how it's drafted, isn't necessarily the way forward. But ultimately, what I want to see is the issue addressed somehow, and if it can be done, as I said, through various other pieces of legislation, or if this can be incorporated as it is into another piece of legislation, that's fine by me as well. I just finally want to say as well that we've seen many attacks on other members of the emergency services over the last number of years. I tried recently again to get conviction rates and to try to get sentencing rates and information on that, and it's very difficult, it seems, to get those figures. The CSO don't seem to be able to produce them when required, and I haven't been able to get them from the department either. But I think we acknowledge that there was a bill here a number of years ago on attacks on members of the emergency services. And I think where it fell down was perhaps on the mandatory element of the sentencing. But I think we need to look at that whole area again. And if we can't have mandatory sentences, let's look at looking at increasing sentences, or doing something that will provide a deterrent there, because when you look at ambulance personnel, you look at fire services, you look at all the other people who in the course of their work get attacked in various ways. That's not acceptable. And it is an attack, again, as I said earlier, like an attack on the Gardaí, it's an attack on the state and it's an attack on every citizen, and that can't be tolerated. So I very much welcome the opportunity. I would like to hear your views, and thank you.
Thank you. And now call on the Minister.
Deputy Brendan Griffin to reply as proposer.
Yep.
I want to thank each and every one of the speakers here today. I think it's been a very proactive debate, and it's been something that has been helpful, I think, certainly in highlighting this issue, highlighting this problem, and discussing how we can address it and how we can move this forward and what we can do to extend further protection to members of Garda Síochána. Thank you, Minister Harris, for attending, and I very much welcome that the Government will not be opposing the bill. And look, as I said from the start, what I'm interested in here is the ultimate goal. So I'm absolutely open to any amendments or to any technical changes or otherwise that would just make this a stronger bill, make it better law, and extend the maximum level of protection to Garda Síochána. And however that can be done, I'm absolutely open to that. So I thank you for that. And I just want to acknowledge Minister Fitzgerald's contribution to her department since she became Minister. I think she's been a very proactive Minister. I think she's been a very reforming Minister, has shown great mettle in her department, and I commend her for her work, and I welcome the current legislation on burglaries and also on bail. And again, something I've been raising here for a number of years, the issue of tagging. I think it needs to be implemented. Again, to use technology to the best possible advantage of the state. I think there is a place for it. There is a role to be played by electronic tagging, and I think it's one that we need to pursue. I thank Deputy Sean Fleming, who's no longer with us, for his contribution. I actually wasn't aware of 53% actually being the figure of unmarked vehicles in the state under the Gardaí, and while I'm sure that each and every one of those vehicles is needed, we need to get that percentage down and get more marked vehicles, more visible vehicles. That is, again, I know that has started, that process of investment, expanding the fleet has started, thankfully. And I absolutely acknowledge the great work that's been done and the unprecedented, and I use the word unprecedented, investment on Garda vehicles. But as I said earlier, what we need now, though, to make the norm out of the exception, out of making Garda vehicles high-powered, high-strength and high speed, and that's something we need to continue doing now. They shouldn't be the exceptional vehicles, they should be the normal vehicles, and it needs to be done. Also, as well, I think that the suggestion in relation to GPS monitoring and driver training as well from Deputy Fleming is helpful and needs to be looked at in the future. And also I acknowledge as well that the bill that was brought forward by Fianna Fáil in relation to the motorways and putting in place CCTV cameras on the motorway network, quite similar to my own proposal in relation to strategic rural locations. I think there's a role to play there. I think there's something that could be very positive out of that being pursued. I thank Deputy Harrington for his contribution. And Deputy Harrington spoke about something, I suppose, that's at the very heart of this bill, which is the lack of respect for members of Garda Síochána that has slowly crept in over time. And that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be reversed, that trend of a loss of respect. And, you know, never should we have a situation where a police force is beyond question. But certainly we should never have a situation either where Gardaí are spat at in the course of their duty, where they're verbally abused, in some cases physically abused, and that is central to what I'm trying to stop here, because the criminals who perpetrate the crime that I'm trying to clamp down on don't think twice about what they do. They don't think twice, and that's the nub of the problem. And it's a general lack of respect from Garda Síochána, for the uniform, for the institution, and that needs to change. And Deputy Harrington referred to equating this to attempted murder, and he's right. He's absolutely right, and there can be no soft line in this. I thank Deputy Owen Murphy for his contribution. And Deputy Murphy referred in particular to the opportunity now that arises again with the improving economy, with the recovering public finances, and about better resourcing our Gardaí. And I think there is a great opportunity now, and it's about prioritising expenditure. And we certainly have a lot of catching up to do. And a great start has been made. A great start has been made, and we need to keep that going. And Deputy Murphy, I think, made one particular line. Attack on Gardaí is an attack on all of us. An attack on Gardaí is an attack on all of us. And that's basically the key thing here. That our Gardaí are the people who are out in the front line. They're vulnerable. They're putting themselves between the criminal and society and communities and individuals. And therefore, they need extra protection. They need to be treated differently. They need to be treated especially in the eyes of the law, because they are doing a special job, and that's how I would see it. Deputy Alan Farrell, unfortunately, 88 members is what Deputy Farrell referred to. 88 members have lost their lives in the course of their duties in the history of the state since 1922, and that's just an incredible number when you think about it. That even here all day today, the most we had voting here was around the 60 mark all day, and if you think that's the number of Gardaí who've lost their lives in the course of protecting the citizens of this country, they do an amazing job, a remarkable job, and they need everybody here to support them 100%. And Deputy Farrell also referred to high power and high strength. Again, something that's a common remark made here, that we need our vehicles to be high powered and high strength to give Gardaí the best possible chance. And he also referred to attacks on other emergency services personnel, as I referred to in my opening statement, and that perhaps the spirit of this law could be incorporated into laws in the future that would protect those people, because we've all seen it, and particularly it was referred to on Bonfire Nights by Sean Kine, Deputy Sean Kine. It's not seen, unfortunately, in enough people's eyes, it's not seen as a line that you do not cross, attacking emergency personnel. And we need to absolutely let people be in no uncertainty that this is completely unacceptable. This is so far past the line you can't see the line anymore. It's just not on. It doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen, but it is happening, unfortunately. And that's the approach I think that we need to take. I thank Deputy McLaughlin for his contribution and for his research on the issue. And look, as I said from the start here, what I'm putting forward here is I'm absolutely open to people's differing views. I think we certainly agree on a lot more than we disagree on, and you know, I welcome your comments in relation to looking at the sentencing council and looking at maybe doing things differently, and perhaps there is a role to play there, and perhaps that's something that needs to be explored. But my fear here, by bringing this forward, is that there is an idea in the mind of the criminal that at the moment that it's not exceptional to ram a Garda vehicle, that it's an option in a case where you're trying to evade arrest by Gardaí. And I think that we need to put forward every possible effort to remove that idea. And you know, I would call on Sinn Féin at this stage not to oppose the bill, and there will be an opportunity hopefully at a further stage where you will have a contribution to make, and where your contribution will be taken on board, and seeing how we can, what we can do to strengthen this law, to make it the best possible law to protect Gardaí. And I think if we could take an all-Parliament approach to doing this, I think it would send out a very strong message. So I would call on Sinn Féin not to oppose the bill at this stage, and I'm sure that your input is certainly welcome and would be welcome at a further stage. Finally, there were two further contributors, Deputy Tony Lawler and Deputy Sean Kine. Deputy Tony Lawler referred to the developing trend now where the patrol car is more and more of an office, and that is quite the case. I have a number of good friends who have joined the force, and they spend an awful lot of time out and about in the patrol car. And just by virtue of the hours that are spent there, they are more vulnerable. And again, that's why this law is trying to address that issue and to try to strengthen their protection. And Deputy Lawler as well referred to criminals not seeing a deterrent at present, and that is the case, unfortunately. That is the case, and we just need to tackle that. Deputy Sean Kine then referred to the number of Gardaí and the number of new vehicles that have been rolled out, and that's a great start. It's a move in the right direction. But as I said, we need to keep going now in the right direction. And Deputy Kine particularly referred to high-power vehicles, and I welcome his comments. That's what we need. We need to even up the scales here. We need to give the Gardaí the best possible chance. And Deputy Kine, I suppose, I thought deeply about what he was saying about criminals. If they don't think twice about attacking a peacekeeper, certainly there's no for them, children or other vulnerable people don't come into their thoughts at all either. And that's something that we can't tolerate. We can't take a soft approach on that. There's no excuse for that. And as a Parliament here, we need to come down heavy on that. So look, I thank every member for your contributions here. As I said, this is what it is, purely trying to extend more protection to Gardaí. More protection to Gardaí is more protection to the citizen. And I feel that as a Parliament, we could all work together on this to bring forward the best possible law and perhaps extend it to all other areas as well of the emergency services. But again, I thank the contributors and hopefully we can see progress in this. Thank you.